Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to have you with us today. I'm very excited that one, it's after November 1st, and we all know that gives us an opportunity to take a breath of fresh air and just kind of breathe a little bit. And two, I'm very excited to have our guest today and for the topic we're going to talk about. My name is Cyndy McDonald, and I am the host for these Friday forums. Right now, I've been offering them about once a month so that it gives us an opportunity to stay connected and stay on top of topics and things that we care about. I always want to introduce you to subject matter experts in areas that matter to you. And also, we especially wanted to honor veterans and Veterans Day. That's November 11th. So thank you, Steve, for being with me. We're glad to have you here.
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
Let's hear from our audience first and tell us where you're from. And also tell us if you're a veteran or if you know a veteran. So let's see who all we have here today. I know it's still in the middle of our busy season, so I know a lot of people will be watching this later. But as you're coming into the Friday Forum today, tell us where you're from and if you are a veteran or know a veteran. So Andrea, so glad to see you. She is a veteran, and I know her father was a veteran. Stacy, glad to know you. Glad to have you here. Jennifer, glad to have you here. Her dad's a veteran, Navy SEAL. Her nephew, Air Force. Who else? Anybody else have who are veterans or know veterans? I think most of us would at least have had some contact with a veteran, being married to an Air Force veteran, father being an Army. I wonder how that goes when you have Air Force and Army. Bakersfield, hi, Kat. I'm so glad to see you. Look, Steve, we've got people from Virginia and Bakersfield, Newport Beach. Renee was in the Korean War. I understand that. Idaho. So you can see Jeffrey, friends are veterans, and that's very, very common. So lots of engagement and interest in this community. And I wanted to share my past and my connection. My dad was in the Air Force, and he joined when he was, I guess, barely 18. He never graduated from high school. And so going to the military was such a wonderful experience for him. He served in the Azores, and he served in the military motor pool. Is that the right term? So he drove the trucks and he drove the generals around, and he did all of that like you see on MASH, right? And so that was my dad. And yet he learned those skills, and he came back and was a mechanic. And he was able to support our family. And I'm always been very grateful that my dad had that opportunity, because that gave him tools and a career that could sustain him and future generations. And I think that's something that we don't think about very, sometimes we lose sight of that. So, soon Dan's got his grandfather. Jim he knows a lot. He's written blog posts. So glad to have everybody here today. So I want to introduce you all to my guest, to Steve Colley. And Steve is he's a veteran. He has quite a bit of experience too. He's the founder and principal consultant for Waypoint College Consulting in Little Rock, Arkansas. In addition to serving in that local area, Steve also specializes in service academies and veterans transitioning into higher education. Those of you who've been in my UCLA class know this is a topic we also cover in my special issues class, and it's something that's also very near and dear to my heart. So Steve is a Naval Academy graduate, and he's also a former Marine Corps officer, and he's also a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. So after service in the Marines, he worked as a legislative aide in the Congress and later as a staff member of the Senate Committee on Veteran Affairs. Steve has worked with many service organizations, student veterans, and the Service Academy community. So that is quite a background, Steve. So we're very glad to have you. And I will add that you were also in my UCLA special issues. And have you finished the UCLA program, or are you?
I still have the practicum left. But your class was fantastic, and it was great to connect to you, through that. So thanks.
Well, it was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. And I recognized right away the knowledge and expertise and the passion that you had. So can you tell us, given the broad perspective, but can you give us a little bit more about your military background and your service? What prompted you to go into the military?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you to your service to the veterans that are out there. But for me, I come from, I was born in a military base, grew up as a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force, so we moved around a lot. I went to about 12 different schools. And then on 9/11, I was 17 years old and saw the Twin Towers collapse. And I went straight to a Marine Corps recruiter and wanted to sign up. He said, you need parental consent because I'm not 18 yet, but I'm 17. It was like a little threshold there. And I knew my parents would say, heck no. So I pursued what I wanted to do was the Naval Academy. And I got in and I really wanted to commission in the Marine Corps. Went into the Marines, served 6 years with the infantry. I was a logistics officer. We went to Afghanistan. We did a Marine Expeditionary Unit operation out when they were bombing Libya. But I knew I wanted to get in and get out, get my experience, feel like I served in the war that I believe was the right war at that time, which was Afghanistan. I have my opinions on that now, but back then, I thought that was the right war, and I was, it was a learning experience for me in so many different ways that I can talk about later. But I wanted to pursue public policy, and I wanted to help veterans out, and doing a little bit of national security, studies, and helping veterans communities on Capitol Hill, like really opened my eyes to a lot of the disparities that veterans face. Me seeing it personally, coming back, from my deployments, and feeling a strong sense of guilt, having some struggles for the first time in my life, leaving the military lifestyle that I had from the day I was born on a military base, to being what I was like 30 years old or so, stepping on, what we thought was the other side, that was the greener grass on the other side. And it was challenging. I didn't realize like how much of a cultural difference it would be. And trying to navigate that was a big challenge. So from that point on, I wanted to be an advocate for veterans. And I worked on Capitol Hill for a while, felt a little burnt out, wanted to come home and start a family. And so we moved to Little Rock, and I wanted to be a mentor for students and help veterans out. And so that's what brings me here. So I have, the experience from, what children go through that have family, serving in the military, having served myself. I know the officer perspective of things, but keep in mind, there's also a large enlisted perspective. And they bring a lot of great value to the workforce and to colleges. And it's a whole different dynamic that I think a lot of people don't understand. And then public policy, helping student veterans. So, with that, I'm here to answer any questions and look forward to this discussion.
Well, thank you. That's, it is our background that gives us those perspectives and, frames our experiences. And so that's what's exciting. And now that you're come to this point in your life where now you're being that advocate, and you have the tools and the understanding to help others who might be going through that. So especially when they're separating from the service, there's a huge difference between being in the military and being a civilian. So what are some resources that are available to veterans when they're ready to make that transition, when they're leaving the service and they want to go into, they're leaving the military to be a civilian? So what are those resources?
Yeah. So when service members are getting out, they're required to attend the transition assistance program. And basically what that is, and I know it's evolved since I got out, and I saw a little bit of its evolution on Capitol Hill, but basically what it is, it's helping future veterans get ready for either the workforce or going to higher education, preparing them to start a business. For example, they'll have the Department of Labor come, a representative, and provide a seminar on how to do that, or they'll provide someone to talk about how to get into college. And it's just, the tip of the iceberg of like what we counselors, go through, but just gives a little snapshot of what that looks like. And then they have various requirements that they have to fill out before they're allowed to sign their final paperwork to get out. And a lot of times those guys are just itching to get out. It's just like, okay, this is a check in the box, moving on, until they get out and they realize, wait a second, I kind of remember them talking about the VA and how healthcare benefits works. And my back really hurts from all those 20-mile hikes we did, or, my ears, I keep ringing because of the plane that I flew in. And how do I go about getting the benefits that I need? Who do I talk to? I know I go to the VA, but I'm not really sure how that works. So the TAP program provides you with that information. And if you have a student that is currently in that transition process, to make it perfectly clear for them to listen to that and to gather all the resources that are available for that. And if they don't, there are plenty of resources on the other side. There are veteran service organizations that can help, with your claims process on any type of benefits that are out there. They can walk you through the education side of things, or just go straight to a VA and have VA representatives that will help. And they're a lot better at it now than they were in the past. We had a big scandal in 2014 due to wait times. We fixed a lot of that. There's still a lot of struggles and a lot of challenges that VA has to, fix. And there's tons of programs out there, but they are a great resource. So you have that. Another thing too, for service members transitioning out, there's a program called Skill Bridge. And what that is it allows service members to take about 180 days, if their commanding officer approves of it, but 180 days to go join a local business or factory or some organization to kind of gain some experience on, what's out there, to get their feet wet, before they get out. So they have a little bit of job experience that might be a cross section with their military occupational specialty. It's a great resource. I know a lot of commanding officers don't really know much about it, but it's out there. And, it's another thing that we try to push, because, what you don't want is a guy getting out of the military and then he's waiting at the bus stop, like you see in Hollywood, holding his big bag saying, okay, where am I going now? And there are plenty of guys that are like that, so the resources are out there. It's just trying to help people understand and communicate that to them. And as counselors, having those resources available to us to help them in that transition process can go a very long way.
So do those ever expire? Like, if you're at different times, is there a time limit or anything on these?
Yeah. So for Skill Bridge and TAP, that's while you're in service. After that, you can go to the VA at any point in time. We've had Korean War veterans coming to us to get their claims done after 50 something years, so that doesn't expire. But what's most critical for any benefits that you have, to include education benefits, is to have the final piece of paperwork that they give you that is called the DD-214. That is your golden ticket to gain any kind of benefits, to claim that you are a veteran. It shows how much time in service you have, which they use that for a calculation to determine how much post 9/11 GI Bill benefits you get. So it's a very critical piece of paperwork that veterans are told, and they know, to lock that thing up and have that available to them. So having that DD 214, your VA benefits don't expire as long as you're honorably discharged.
So does that include what level of education benefits that they are entitled to too?
Yeah. So for post 9/11, depending on your time in service, if you have at least 90 days in service, you qualify for, I believe, if I remember correctly, it's about 40% of the full benefit for public colleges. Then they have another number for private colleges. And then it goes up from there about every 6 months of time in service that you have, up to 36 months. If you've served 36 straight months in active duty, you qualify for 100% of the post 9/11 GI Bill, which includes tuition and fees for public schools of where you're a resident of, money for housing, books and supplies. And they also kind of help you move from a rural area to a school if that's where you are. And you have the stipend as well based on your cost of living of where you're located. So it's a great resource. I used it for grad school, and I also used it for the college counseling certificate program as well, which was awesome. It's a good resource, and having your DD 214 available, it's really easy. You can just go online, plug that in, and then they submit a form, and then you work with your veterans representative at any of the colleges, and they'll put that in.
So sometimes you can have those benefits used by your children, or even or there are benefits available to your spouse. Because I know of spouses, I worked with a consultant, her husband was stationed in the Naval Air Station that's near where we live. And so she used those benefits to do the UCLA program as well.
Yeah. So that is available. And service members will be asked if they want to opt into transferring that to their dependents ahead of time. I believe the latest law still has it that way. I think they were trying to change that, but basically, it can go to the students or the spouse, and then they register that through the VA, and it's the same process after that. Also, for students that have any family member that was killed in action, they receive the full post 9/11 GI Bill. And then a fun fact for any students that have parents that were Medal of Honor recipients, they get automatically accepted into any service academy as long as they qualify physically and academically.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Yeah. Not many of those, but
yeah, right. Well, and it kind of, I'm sure the numbers go up and down. So, so what are some of the biggest challenges? And we're going to go back. First of all, Liz posted a question. She says at one time, veterans of color didn't receive GI benefits. Now, she says, I assume that's no longer true. Do you know anything about that history?
I mean, I know in the past, in our history long ago, yes. But now, I mean, that's not I've never heard of that being an issue, today. The military and the VA, has been very diverse, and they take care of all of their people very well. I've never seen an issue where someone of color doesn't get it, but in the past, absolutely. And I know that there were measures in Congress, to try to rectify that, just to put on the record that, hey, this was wrong. But for anyone that faces that, my advice to them would be to contact their congressman.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that applies to gender too.
Right.
All the benefits and everything apply equally to males, females, transgender, and
right.
That's a whole nother topic too.
Yeah.
But what are some of the challenges that veterans face when they're coming out of military service and back? We've talked about the education. What are some other ones? You mentioned how they want to get out, and a lot of times they're older. and they may have a family. So,
Right.
so what are some of those challenges that you see?
Yeah, so I think there are tangible challenges like if you're trying to go to college and you have a spouse and one or two kids, you are a non-traditional student that isn't going to feel like you're going to fit in with the other 18, 19-year-old kids that are there, but you're and you're a hard worker, and you get upset when you see the younger kids kind of goofing off when they should be studying in the study group. So there are those types of challenges. And advice I give to veterans is, look, you were a leader in the military. You were either a sergeant, or an officer. Use those leadership skills that you learned while you're in the military, and try to be a mentor to these students. Try to help them out. Take the lead. And it's going to benefit them in the long run. And then you're also going to learn from their experiences. I got out and worked with a lot of younger students in a program that I was in, and I kind of had an arrogant mentality when I first went into it, because I was like, well, I was a captain and I was in charge of 220 Marines. Here I am with a sophomore from college. What does he know? But I try to open up to them, and I actually learned culturally what I took for granted, that I thought I knew, but I really didn't, because I'd been on a military base my whole life. It was just little simple things that you would think is common knowledge, really isn't. So just being open and trying to walk them through that. But I think the other thing, which is I guess a little less tangible, is the culture that veterans come from, especially if they've served a long time, is that you join the service to obviously serve your country, but you do that with a team, and that team becomes a family. There's different versions of that. We can joke about the Air Force. I saw a lot of Air Force people on here. But whether you're in the Navy or the Marine Corps or, the Army, it becomes a family. Your unit becomes a family, because you're all trying to accomplish the same mission, and you're working together and training together. And it truly becomes a 24/7 job, not just when you deploy. Because at any moment you could be called up, to go serve. Like on 9/11, when my dad is sitting on a C-130 airplane on strip alert, waiting to be called to go pick up the airborne, because we don't know what's going on right now. And how do kids handle that? How does a spouse handle that? Are we ever going to see him again? And so you go through those emotions, and the way that you cope with it is through the community that you're part of, because guess what? The next door neighbor is the co-pilot of my dad, and the guy across the street is the navigator. And, so it becomes this community where the spouses can get together, and they, the service members, fight the fight, and the folks back on the home front, support each other as a family would. But as soon as you leave that, you go from, being a team member on a mission to an individual lost in a sea of options. You relied so much on, the network that was there, and, the system that was there. Some guys are a little bit, I don't know if institutionalized is the right word, but, there's a sense of that, where you're used to, what this culture, and you leave it, and you can't understand why civilians can't just come together. Why can't we just work as a team? Hey, they said 6 o'clock, why are you here at 6:15? Just little things like that would get to them. Or having the camaraderie among neighbors, that we're used to on military bases. You lose that identity. And then it becomes more difficult when veterans face challenges after getting out. Not all veterans are broken. The majority of them do great things, and they find themselves, and they find their communities, and they do fantastic things. It's not the Hollywood version of the veteran, who is the Rambo or the ticking time bomb. But I mean, there are some guys that are out there that suffer from post-traumatic stress. There are guys that have, traumatic brain injuries or lost limbs, or like for myself, a strong, feeling of guilt, from decisions made that cost lives. And you leave the camaraderie that you had and the support network that you had, and now how do you cope? And that's when you see a lot of guys that face, drinking problems, or, drugs, or, suicide, is a big option that is, that we try to fight. And so to get veterans to feel like they're part of a community is really important. And how do we go about doing that? There's a ton of resources that are out there, but veterans don't know what they don't know. Right. And we have to try to advocate for them and get them to understand what is out there. And to understand that, me thanking you for your service isn't just an empty saying that, me as a veteran's like, well, you don't even know what the heck that means. Listen to their stories, become friends with them. They are good people. And what I challenge veterans to do as well is, let's talk about our wars and what it means to us, and, and try to listen to the other side and be open-minded, to what's out there. So, but like I said, I would say the vast majority of veterans are not, these broken types, but there are a lot that are out there, and we all have to come together and kind of bring a sense of that camaraderie back.
And build that through, I know some colleges build lounges or, create those environments where the veterans can come and have that camaraderie and have that common language and background. And, there's culture in everything that we do. There's culture in the military and in the non-military. And, when you bring those together, that can make quite a combination. So that's really wise words. So let's switch gears here a little bit. We're getting a lot of questions, and I want to talk about the other end of it, is going into the military and the service and the military academies. So, and we're getting a lot of questions about our ROTC. So we'll get to that. Yep. But first, I want you to just talk about the military academies themselves and how they're different. I know they're out there, and I've sent students to them, but again, I just know the Air Force. So, what's the difference? What are the different ones, and how are they different?
Yeah. So you have 5 service academies, and they represent the military branches and then the kind of law enforcement and the merchant marines. But you have Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs that produces Air Force officers and now Space Force officers. And then you have West Point. US Military Academy in West Point, New York, produces Army officers. And then the Naval Academy, which produces both Navy and Marine Corps officers, because the Marine Corps is part of the Department of the Navy. US Coast Guard Academy, which is in New London, Connecticut, a really cool little school that produces obviously Coast Guard officers, and they work for the Department of Homeland Security. And then the Merchant Marine Academy in Kings Point, New York, which is a very small school and a very cool location. They produce, a lot of them commission into a lot of the branches, but I would say probably about half, or maybe a little more than half, will go and be, drive ships, merchant ships, and then be on call for, say we go to a war, and they're going to be the merchant mariners that, push our strategic supplies to different locations, that kind of thing. But those are your 5 service academies. And it's, I'm sure some of you know this already, but it is a lengthy process to get in, and it's very competitive. But the steps for that, and I can go into that if you want me to. Yep.
That's the next question is, okay, so we have all these different academies, and I think it's important for people to know, like, I didn't know that Merchant Marines, they could go into different, branches of the military. So I think understanding those 5 different academies and how they are different and yet how they're the same helps us as counselors be able to make informed recommendations for my students. So, So now they want to go to a military academy, and then what do they do?
Yeah. So my recommendation for them is, just like any other school, you want to demonstrate interest. And the best way to do that at a service academy is to apply to they have a summer program. I know at the Naval Academy and the Air Force is called Summer Seminar. West Point. I don't remember what it is, but it's your summer before your senior year. It's about 1 or 2 weeks long. And you go through like a mini boot camp and then do a little bit of a STEM project of some sort. And it is selective to get into that. And so that's a really good way of showing interest. I didn't go to that, but I was able to make it in. So it's it doesn't hurt to try. But after that, when you start your application, first I have to determine eligibility. Obviously, are you a U.S. citizen? You're not supposed to have any children. There's an age limit to this. It's not just high school students that apply to service academies. There's also enlisted service members, or it's not just civilian students. There's also service members that apply to service academies. And so there's an eligibility form that you fill out with any of the service academies. Once they determine your eligibility, then they'll send you a candidate questionnaire that will allow you to open the application. And that's a lot of your biographical information. And from there, that's when the meat and potatoes start. You have your traditional college application on top of the nomination process, which is you have to have one nomination from a member of Congress or the president of the United States or the vice president or the secretary of the Navy. Those top three are very rare. They usually give those to service members. But traditionally for service academy applicants, you can either get one from your congressman in your district or one of your 2 senators from your state, but it has to be from your place of residence. And each senator or congressman, they have their own requirements. And a lot of them are all over the place. So it's really important to just go to their website. They usually have a link in any of the members' websites, and they'll tell you what they expect, from that. And a lot of times it's going to be an application, maybe a short essay, and there's always an interview. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's the member that is interviewing the student, and it can be very daunting. I interviewed with my congressman and 2 senators. And I was applying to the Naval Academy, and one of the senators gave me a nomination to West Point, and I was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" Well, I guess I should probably apply there now too. So, so the interview can be, daunting. But each senator and congressman, I think each congressman has 10 slots that they can fill, and I believe it's the senators as well. And that's to any of the schools. So if they send 10 to Naval Academy, then that's it. So it is competitive. And also depending on like where you're from, if you live in a rural area and they have 10 slots, that's easier than, someone in like Baltimore or something. But I think they fluctuate that. But anyway, so there's a nomination. And then you also have your medical exam. So they assign you to go to the closest military base or to meet with a military doctor. And my advice to students on that is, definitely be honest on your forms for that and answering the questions that the doctor asks of you, but don't divulge anything that happened in the past unless, the doctor finds out about it, or if you think that it's going to preclude you from going to the service academy, maybe you shouldn't go anyway. Like I had asthma when I was two years old. I know I've heard other students that they've said that and it disqualified them. I've never had asthma ever since, so, be honest about your application, answer the questions from the doctor and leave it at that. And then you have your physical fitness test. And that's like, it's like a sprint and throwing a ball around and all this stuff. So all of that combined is your application. If you get the nomination, then it opens the door for you receiving an appointment to the service academy, and then you get accepted. There is an option that they offer that can send students to a prep school. So if you're right at the cusp of getting in, or if you're a recruited athlete, that's usually where they send them to. So each of the service academies have their own prep school. I actually went to the Naval Academy Prep School in Rhode Island for 1 year, and you receive pay as an enlisted service member, and you have to meet academic requirements to be able to get accepted. So in a nutshell, that's the process.
So when do they start that? Like, should they start that in their sophomore year so that they have that all done in their junior year? Like, you don't
Yeah.
want to start that in the beginning of your senior
Oh
year,
gosh, no,
right?
no. You want to start that early. I mean, beginning of junior year, late in your sophomore year. I mean, you really want to be thinking about this. You want to know what the congressman is looking for. You want to know how to show interest. You want to be physically fit. These service academies are heavy on science and math. Are you good at science and math? You need to strengthen that up. They want a lot of times athletes. Everyone had to do a sport at the Naval Academy while doing your academics. They want to see that you can manage your time efficiently and be a candidate for being an officer in charge of a lot of service members. So being physically fit, they say mentally, morally, and physically, that's what they're looking for. So if you got caught plagiarizing something, best of luck. But if you're team captain, or not even team captain, but if you're in sports, like I lettered in wrestling. I wasn't the great athlete by any means. That helped because it showed that I could do the physical fitness side. My grades were decent. Especially strong in the science and math part of it. And I was also a leader in the junior ROTC program and that kinds of stuff. So they want to see that you have leadership potential and that you're fit, and academics are pretty good.
So let's go into the ROTC aspect of that. Some of the high schools have junior ROTC. I know we have some in our in communities around here because of the Naval Air Station. And then there's ROTC at the college. So what are the benefits of either doing it at the high school or at the college?
Yeah. So benefit for doing it at the high school is, for example, when I was at the Naval Academy, I felt like everybody was an Eagle Scout. Everyone was just this, Captain America, Eagle Scout guy. But I wasn't. And I knew that was a thing. So I tried to maximize my time in JROTC and try to, become a leader. And I got a great letter of recommendation from the colonel that was in charge of it. So because I wasn't doing, Boy Scouts or that kind of thing, I tried to maximize that. And there's a military component in that as well. So I think that was helpful. But in terms of college ROTC, it's in a way, it's a little bit similar to a service academy in that, you graduate if you have an ROTC scholarship. You have a time commitment to the military, just like you do at a service academy. I think it's very important that all students that are applying to service academies or ROTCs, as obvious as it is, to know that you incur a 5-year commitment in the military. I've seen many students show up to induction day at the Naval Academy and say, wait, what? I'm about to sign my oath of office and I owe you guys 5 years of time and service. It's like, yeah, but why do you think this school is free?
Right.
Because that's how you're paying it back. So that surprised me. So it's important that students understand what that looks like and, why they want to do this. It's great that you're getting an ROTC scholarship, but what does that mean to you to serve? Why are you getting into this? Are you getting into it for the right reasons? Because, it's not going to be just, all sunshine and rainbows when you're in the military. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be challenging decisions that have to be made by you as an officer. You might be in a situation where you don't know what to do, and you're going to have to take the initiative. So are you ready to do that in the service of your country and to help enlisted folks, excel in leadership and professional development and mentor them? And if you are, and then this is the best place for you. But if you're not, and you're trying to get this scholarship, you might want to look somewhere else.
So is there an advantage or an edge if you are in the junior ROTC or an ROTC, or versus, because Anne's asking about this too, or just versus enlisting right out of high school or applying to the military academies without, some kind of preparation, the summer programs, things like that. So how do those all shake out?
For students going enlisted, I would think of that as kind of like the same way that we think about gap years. If a high school student doesn't feel like they're quite ready, but they want to join the military. They want to become an officer. I know many officers that are the best officers I've ever met that went in straight as enlisted, so they, right after high school, they go to boot camp and they start out as a private and they serve 4 years. They have a 4-year commitment. At the end of that 4 years, they can get out or they can re-enlist. And the guys that get out, 4 years that you already have your full benefits for post 9/11 GI Bill, you're probably a lot more mature now and you're probably ready to handle school and life and everything else, so it is a great way, I think, for students wanting to go into the military and become an officer, but they might not be ready academically or, if their maturity hasn't developed quite yet, after boot camp, it will. Yeah. And, so that I think that's a great place to do it. And there's various commissioning sources for enlisted, that aren't, that are aside from going to ROTC or the Service Academy. They have other programs as well. I mean, you have to graduate with a bachelor's degree to become an officer. But within that, they have different programs. So it's a great way to do it. In terms of being an officer, whether you went to ROTC or a Service Academy, I mean, we like to joke around and compete with one another and say we're better than the other. But at the end of the day, like after your first 4 years, it really doesn't matter. We're all the same. There is as soon as you go in, because of the commissioning date of Service Academy guys is on the top of the list, and then ROTC guys is below that technically we get promoted before they do. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. Whether you come from ROTC or a Service Academy, you're an officer. That's all that matters.
So an officer is an officer.
Officer is an officer, in my opinion. And if they want to wave their ring around, okay, that's cute.
But do you feel like a student might be better prepared if they're coming from a military background versus somebody who's coming in and has not had any military background?
I mean, it depends. There are great ROTC programs out there, and I'm not trying to bash the Naval Academy or anything. I think it's a great place for that, but it really depends on like what you want to do in life. I really enjoyed that atmosphere of being in the military. That's where I came from, and I wanted to be part of a military school. I applied to the Citadel and Texas A&M Corps of Cadets, and I wanted to go to a military school. But there are great guys that want to serve in the military, but they also want that traditional, university experience, and they're just as prepared. You've got your good apples and your bad ones, right? Wherever you go. Right. And I mean, there's an argument to be made that, there's a lot of leadership development at a Service Academy. I mean, that's our main focus. There's a lot of exposure to, the military, but so there is an ROTC as well. Every summer they send us out to training, and 1 week I went on a submarine, and then another week I was training with Marines, and then another week I was on a ship, and so you get exposed to that kind of thing from either side. So it really depends on how you make of it.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. And that's encouraging because we're bringing people in from all sorts of different, and for many families, they see the military, they can't afford college. And so they see the military as a way to be able to move that generation, their younger generation, up into a different, level and opportunity. So in fact, Dan's asking about, sometimes students, and I've seen this, they do ROTC with the intent of getting into medical school in the future. So is there a branch that's more possible for them to do that? You ask, what is the best branch and how does that process work? Yeah. In that 5-year commitment. So if you want to go in the military, go in medical school, how does that work?
So I know I've got plenty of friends that went to the Naval Academy or West Point or Air Force Academy that if they excelled in their school and the Department of the Air Force or the Department of the military branch said, you know what, we're going to specialize you in medicine, and we're going to send you to medical school right after you graduate from the Naval Academy. I mean, you're going to incur like $1 million, but hey, we're going to send you to school. And I have many friends that have done that. From ROTC, they have similar programs like that. I have my brother-in-law. He's actually in medical school right now, and he's doing it through the Air Force. The Air Force is paying for medical school, and then he owes them a certain amount of years back for his practice. Doing his residency, in a place that what's the word I'm looking for? There's less risk. Doing it, his practice in the military as opposed to private practice. So they're out there for any of them, but each branch of service has the different component of it. So the Navy has its own version, the Army has one, and then the Air Force has one. The Marine Corps doctors are the Navy doctors, so we don't have one.
So it sounds like the best thing is to research each branch and see what their path is. Now, are the students able to say, hey, I want to go to medical school, or is it the military branch that says, hey, you are going to medical school?
No, you can apply for it. And, I can try to find the links, but you can apply for each one of them, and they have a list of requirements for that. I have some links on my website for ROTC scholarships, but I know that it branches into some of the medical stuff. So if anybody wants to look at that, that's on waypointcollege.com. I have a page devoted to military side of things. But I haven't personally have much experience in that. So.
And I'll put those in the show notes. And so those will be posted on cindymcdonald.com as well. And so people will be able to get to that. So Liz asks, is it more difficult to become an officer if you're in an ROTC program rather than a military academy?
I would say it's easier to get into an ROTC program, but then commission as an officer. It's harder to get into a service academy, but easy to graduate and become an officer. And it all balances out at the end, I think. I know. Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to just, depends on how you take it. But I think, and it really depends on the year, because every year, Congress and the Department of Defense mandate how many folks, a quota of officers and enlisted they're bringing in. And that really determines promotion rates. It determines how many people they're going to accept into various programs. So like when I got in, we were right at the end of the surge in Iraq. And, we knew we were about to have a surge in Afghanistan. So it was easy to become a Marine Corps officer because they really needed them, and nowadays I think it's gone down. So it really depends on the year for that, depending on how competitive it's going to be. But there are a lot more ROTC candidates out there. If you get into service academy, as long as you graduate, you got it. So they have that quota already set aside for the service academy, and then there's a open door for ROTC.
So for the prep school, you can apply for it. You don't have to be just recommended for it. Is that correct?
You have to apply to the service academy, and they make the determination on whether they're going to send you to the prep school or not. So
you can't apply for the prep school on your own then?
No.
Okay. See, that's good. That's good to know. So yeah, we're getting a lot of questions. So Myung asked about the Air Force ROT scholarship. She says the application process for Air Force ROTC, for example, seems pretty straightforward for students applying as high school seniors or as college students. Is there a different process for students who are currently on a gap year applying to colleges and hoping for ROTC? So if you take a break in between, or maybe like our community college students, things like that. So does that make a difference? It's
going to be the same. I mean, you're going to have to find the nomination. You're going to have to submit any grades that you have, any credits that you've accumulated, in community college. They're going to look at all of that, but it's going to be the same process. And when if you're thinking about, transferring credits or transferring from a college to a service academy, well, you start as a freshman, regardless of how much time you've had in college. Everybody starts the same and they end the same.
Okay. Um, that's good to know. So what about yellow ribbon? We hear about yellow ribbon benefits. You hear about yellow ribbon schools, and schools will say on their websites, "Oh, we're a yellow ribbon." So some colleges have, like a certain number, like a quota. How do you find out if you'll receive yellow ribbon benefits or not before accepting? Like, so you've been admitted to a college and you want to take advantage. So how do you find that out?
Yeah. So for the yellow ribbon program, you can find all this information out when you submit for your post 9/11 GI Bill. So when you upload your DD 214 and you reach out to the VA and you create an account on VA, they'll tell you, okay, hey, this is how much you get for the post 9/11 GI Bill. And then you can look, they have a directory of all of the colleges and universities that have the yellow ribbon program and how much they offer. Some of them have a quota that they provide. Some of them are unlimited. And so depending on what that looks like, that can really, it could potentially cover the remaining costs for private schools. But it really depends on the school. And so there's a directory, a long list of them actually, that provide that. You can take a look on the website with the post 9/11 GI Bill, and it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes their children can take advantage of those too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I had a student whose father was a veteran, and they were told, "Oh, well, you can get apply in any of the yellow ribbon schools, and you won't have to pay tuition," which was good and fine. But they also qualified for the California grant, so it was pretty much canceled each other out. So they really didn't take advantage of the yellow ribbon because the Cal grant was actually more. Yeah. So sometimes you have to weigh those things too, because it looks good, but maybe something else is going to be of a little bit more benefit. Yeah. So Jim brings up a good point, and I know he's worked in, he's worked with the higher education. Jim, you'll have to give me your exact department that you worked for, but I knew this was a big issue in the past because of the for-profit proprietary colleges were really marketing to veterans and were really, they were teaching on bases and things like that. Yeah. What is the status for those now? I think there's been some laws that have been passed, and the impact of the influence. What is that for proprietary schools for veterans and military bases right now?
Yeah, so there's been legislation to fight against this. There's also a big campaign with VA to try to push against this as well. The veteran service organizations are trying to get the word out there to avoid this. Big proponent of that is the Student Veterans of America, that really advocate, for making sure that, veteran students go to, good schools, not these for-profit schools that, cheat them out, I don't know exactly what the legislation looks like right now on that. I know that was a big fight, when I was there, and we were making some pretty good headway for that. But I do know that it's been a big campaign with the Department of VA and a lot of the veteran service organizations, to avoid that. What I would like to see is if the transition assistance program that, service members, when they have to do that getting out, if they receive that information up front. I know I didn't when I got out, but a lot has changed since then, so I would love to see that change be made during that last touch point, for future veterans.
Definitely. I know. And my husband taught at the Naval Air Station in math and science, and he taught for an accredited nonprofit college, but there were other classes, and there are a lot of classes that they take that can be very beneficial, but whether they're taking it from the for-profit or the nonprofit, sometimes the other challenge that veterans face is they get all this education, but then they get out and none of it counts. And that's frustrating. Yeah. Because it's like, well, why did I do all this? So So there is a training. I've done the training. Bob Dannenhold's done the training, and others might have, for where we can become advocates and become, and I don't remember the exact acronym for it, but it's offered it through New Jersey. And so they haven't had trainings for, obviously because of COVID. So,
Yeah.
so we are almost out of time, and I'm so glad that you've been able to present and talk and share this with us today. What if you could leave one last tip for us as college advisors in working with students, either who are wanting to go in the military from the high school or veterans coming out, what would that be, Steve?
I would say the biggest thing is to make sure they know what they're getting themselves into. And are they doing this for the right reasons? You don't want like some like red badge of courage, I'm going for the glory of it and run up the hill, to realize that like, wow, I'm an officer and I have 80% of my job is behind the desk doing paperwork, important paperwork, that helps, career progression for your men and women. But knowing what they're getting themselves into, the kinds of decisions that they potentially might have to make, are you going to be able to tell someone to accomplish a mission and have them risk their lives, for accomplishing whatever it is that we're doing? Are you willing to, as cliche as it sounds, are you willing to lay your life down for your country or for the men and women to the left and right of you? And if that's something that you feel passionate about, just a lot of the buzzwords, serve your country, then it's the right thing for you. And I think it's an honorable thing to do, and it's not for everybody. And if folks that don't do it, I fully respect them as well. They offer, all types of things, across our communities. Not everyone has to join the military. But the other thing I would say to students that want to go is to also understand the difference between enlisted and officer and what it takes to become enlisted and officer. The enlisted is the backbone of our military. They are very hard workers, very passionate about what they do. They are the treasure of our military. And going into that can really give you some great understanding of what is happening in the military if you want to become an officer, and give you a sense of pride that you serve. And then you get out of it with a lot of education benefits. And a lot of other types of benefits as well. So going the enlisted route, I think, is an honorable way to do it. Of course, you can do it as an officer, like we discussed before, and understanding what that means. So the two things that I would say is know what you're getting yourself into, and know the difference between enlisted and officer and how that relationship interacts. The customs and courtesies that happen in the military are there for a reason. And, how do we work as a team? And are you willing to be part of that team?
I think that's very wise piece of advice, Steve. Thank you very much. I've had a number of questions that I've said, ask Steve. So how can somebody learn more or get a hold of you?
Yeah. So first you can go to my website, which is waypointcollege.com. I have a lot of resources there for both Service Academy and military stuff there. And then rest of it's like, serving Little Rock, as an IEC. You can also reach out to me on my email, which is stevecolley@waypointcollege.com. Or you can call my business number, which is 501-712-3252. And I would be very happy to talk to anyone about veterans issues or Service Academy issues. Always there to give a hand to my fellow veterans.
That's wonderful. And so if a counselor has a question or something, they can come to you and, you can collaborate with them in working with a student or.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And again, we all thank you for the contribution, for your advocacy, and for the voice that you have and that you share for veterans. And it's very much appreciated.
Thank you for the invite, Cyndy. This has been wonderful. And thanks for allowing me to give the voice to veterans out there for the rest of the counselors.
Well, it's our pleasure. So I want to invite everybody. My next Friday forum will be in December. It's actually going to be December 3rd, and I'm going to do an open forum. So every now and then I'll do these, and it's just an opportunity for us to get together and talk. So it's actually going to be in a meeting format so that we can do breakouts and have small room discussions. There's still a registration. So if this is something you want to participate in with a group of colleagues, we can all talk about what the season has been like. I mean, it's our second application during COVID. We've all noticed a lot of different things this year. So join me on Friday, December 3rd, same time, 11 a.m. Pacific. And I'd love to have you. I'd love to have part of that conversation. Just go to my website at cindymcdonald.com. And don't forget, it's cyndyMcdonald.com. And I'll see everybody here again in December and January. I'm planning our whole schedule for 2022. And I want to do a session to kick off the year on professional development and, what are our choices and why should you, I'm a new CEP. Steve, this is something you should be planning on. And so why do that? And why is professional development? So I want to kick the year off with that. And so I hope you guys will join me and all of that. So, and one last thing, I just want to tell everyone, thank you. I've just gotten such an outpouring this week. I've got emails that I'm going to answer and comments on social media and everywhere for, I'm now wearing one less hat. No longer with Guided Path. I'm going to, Guided Path will be, I'm not going to be a consultant for Guided Path as of November 19th. So that was a hard decision to make. I started Guided Path in 2005, and now they're off and running and doing great things. And now I'm going to be able to do other things. So thank you for everyone that has sent positive messages to me. I have really felt that and really appreciate it. So I'm kind of exploring what I'm going to do. I will put in my show notes too. I do have an interest form. So if you're interested in doing some special workshops or other things, Facebook groups or things like that for next year, I will definitely love to hear from you. So Steve, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Have a great Thanksgiving. Everybody else, same to you. And I will talk to you again in a month. All right.
Thanks, Cyndy.
All right. Take care.